I find myself in an oasis of precarious tranquility, alone, vulnerable to all that dwell beyond those wretched things, beasts that roam in the rivers of the moat. Thankfully far from here, where at least I am safe. Plentiful are the fibers of the earth, and a long-suffering life raft has been found in the toilet, situated in the very center of the island. No paper, of course. Where would it come from? But why even wipe in a place like this? I'm unsure of how long it's been, as time doesn't seem real anymore. I don't quite recall how I got here, which is odd because I know roughly what led up to my arrival. I suppose it's prudent to begin by saying that my name is Jeremy Kilpatrick, and I'm a plumber with the New Hampshire Plumbers Union. If I recall correctly, I had set out to spy on the Fellowship of the Rolling Scarab after reading my shop steward's journal. Obviously, transcribing it in its entirety for this account would be unproductive, so I will sum up some of its more pertinent contextual information here, then use it as a reference when it becomes relevant going forward. The only expository context you'll really need to be aware of from here is the history of two ancient and powerful secret societies that have been locked in a battle for dominance between order and chaos. Those secret societies are the Fellowship of the Rolling Scarab and the New Hampshire Plumbers Union. Naturally, I will elaborate first on the one with which I am more familiar. The New Hampshire Plumbers Union, as it turns out, is actually a front for a very old order of waste management tradesmen called the Brotherhood of the Water Horse, who see it as their mission from God to ensure that the water that graces the lips of man is clean and plentiful. The organization was formed as a division of a larger association of various guilds called the Calloused Hands of God, founded by Eamon O'Shea in Galway, Ireland, as a response to the growing influence of Freemasonry. Eamon was the patriarch of a rather large family that was deeply involved in carpentry for the area, having grown things big enough to have become the guildmaster among men in that profession. After using his position to improve the lives of those working under his guild, his foremost priority was uniting all the other guilds under a single banner to rival the local Masonic lodges. Given that Galway was a very Catholic, working-class city, this was a very easy thing to do, and thus, the Calloused Hands of God were founded. Of course, they learned from the enemy, forming codes and rituals of their own that, in their minds, rebaptized the nature of ritual among brotherhoods of men, compared to the effete nature of Masonic devilry. Again, I'm just reporting this as written. Over the centuries, the Calloused Hands grew with an even, steady quiet, slowly opening chapters in different places all over the world. To this day, they continue their subtle Cold War against the mercantilist order of the world, which is going about as well as you might expect. It's even still based out of Galway, with a direct descendant of Eamon's running the show, as it has been since the beginning. Of course, things are a lot more decentralized now, with the Brotherhood of the Water Horse less focused on politics and more focused on the mission I mentioned earlier, ensuring that people get reliable access to clean water. The New Hampshire Plumbers Union was just one of a handful of front-facing organizations for the Brotherhood of the Water Horse's New England chapter, which was, until recently, led by our shop steward, Erwin Gerhardt. The organization as a whole is currently said to be led by Horse Lord Zachary Quimberton, though he had gone missing some months ago, according to Erwin. Horse Lord is the title that the Brotherhood gives to its supreme leader, if that wasn't clear. I guess that expedition was more or less Erwin's way of inducting myself and the others into the Brotherhood of the Water Horse. When it comes to the Fellowship of the Rolling Scarab, I'm woefully less knowledgeable. What I do know is that they are followers of an ancient religion worshipping the supremacy of nature over the human consciousness. It's reported by Irwin in his journal as referred to in the histories of the world as a brutish, troglodytic form of worship that predates man's descent from the heavens. Their mission is to wipe out humanity with its own waste, and allow the creatures that feed on it to be those that inherit their place as the dominant species, with the cycle, of course, repeating itself anytime a creature gains this level of consciousness. They appear to follow a rather enigmatic man dressed in a maroon wizard robe adorned with brown blotches and a matching hat, referred to as the Sorcerer by all of their texts. Based on this report, they had taken up residence in the town of Newcastle, drawing out our shop steward and his most dedicated comrades in the process. It then fell upon me to fulfill the duties of the water horse. As I mulled the pages over at home, never once leaving the house as I did so, the next step became clear. I had to return to Newcastle. The drive had gone fairly well until I arrived in town. The streets were devoid of people, with cars, strollers, and other personal effects seemingly abandoned in place. Even more, it seemed that everything within the town limits was dead. The trees were black and bare against the sunlit sky, and the grass below it was browning and withered. The only sign of anything having lived here recently were a couple of roadkill squirrels that I'd seen on the edge of town. That is, until a man stumbled into the road I was driving on. Thankfully, I managed to swerve out of his way in time. Seeing no signs of oncoming traffic, I parked my car in the middle of the road and approached the man. "Excuse me, sir. Do you know what's been going on here lately?" I asked as I walked up to him, trying to sound friendly and impartial. I don't think I'll ever be able to wipe his anguished grin of bitter satisfaction from my mind. "Haven't you heard?" he asked as he turned his head to face me. "The Sorcerer has purged this land of unfit life." His eyes were now examining mine for the same thing I had sought in him, answers. "Have you submitted yourself to the Sorcerer's will?" "Actually, I came here to ask you about that." He reacted by tilting his head to the left a bit in a precocious curiosity. "Do you know anything about the Fellowship of the Rolling Scarab?" After a long pause, he spoke. "I suppose it doesn't matter if you're among the profane," he said. "They spared my life and gave me their gift for this moment." With that, he produced and promptly ate one of those small totems I described earlier. From there, he morphed quickly into a shit golem. Thankfully, I was able to make it to my car and evade him. I continued my journey in earnest for a while, but I took the second large throng of shit golems I had to plow through as my cue to leave. On the drive back, the comforting notion that I had been in way over my head crept over me like a weighted blanket, and I sought solace in a distantly familiar place. "It's been a while since I've seen you set foot in here," a voice said as I stepped into the Mass Hall of St. Mary's. "You weren't the brother I was expecting," I said to Wade, my eldest brother, whose voice I recognized from the back of the room. "When they quarantined Newcastle, he went out there to deliver people their last rites. Haven't seen hide nor hair of him since." When Wade stood, I saw he was in his full uniform. "Mom always said it was rude to wear your hat in church," I said, reflexively. Wade chuckled, then hung his campaign hat on the pew he had been standing beside. "Anyway, what did you hear about what happened in Newcastle?" "It's an odd way to phrase that question, Jeremy," Wade began inquisitively. "But you were part of the NHPU, so it's not too unusual for you to have some awareness of the situation. Our working theory is that the situation in Newcastle was the result of a conspiracy enacted by your union's leadership to willfully dismantle the infrastructure of Newcastle in order to create the false impression of its failure. Your union is believed to have done this to mislead the public, as well as the Board of Infrastructure, in order to justify fulfilling the recent demands made by the union. Our current top suspect is a man named Erwin Gerhardt, though it is clear he did not act alone. So tell me, Jeremy, what do you know about what happened in the sewers? To start, that's all news to me, I began, attempting to break through Wade's glare. All I heard was that something bad happened in Newcastle and they had to close it off. Honestly, I just came here to let Ben hear my confession. I wasn't aware they were telling the plumbers in advance about the quarantine, Wade said sharply. But it'd make sense. You guys must have been getting calls from there like crazy. Like you wouldn't believe, I said casually. Anyway, I should probably get going. I've got some other work shit I need to take care of. Mom always said it was rude to curse in church, Wade said as I began to exit. Also, before you leave, I thought I'd let you know one more thing. I stopped at the door and turned to face him. We did manage to pick up one of the guys we believe to have been acting with your shop steward at the time. Calls himself Schultz. He's been pretty tight-lipped so far. Seems to know enough to play the lawyer card for now, but I doubt it'll take much more pressure to crack him. Wade shrugged nonchalantly. Just thought you might want to know. I nodded, then made my way out the door.